Hello everyone, welcome to today's disc review. I've got a special one for you as Jesse and the crew over at Trash Panda, they sent me their newest Overstable Midrange to try. If you haven't heard of Trash Panda, you have to check them out. They are doing great things for both disc golf and the community as their discs use 100% recycled plastic. So all those used discs that you don't want anymore, that's right, Jesse and crew are turning those into sweet, sweet plastic. And again, they were nice enough to send me the newest Overstable Midrange in their lineup. That's right, everyone, we're taking a look at the Canyon from Trash Panda. So once again, Jesse and all of you at Trash Panda, thank you all so much for everything that you're doing. Everyone, let's be sure to show Trash Panda our love and support. Now, for the profile, you can see that the Canyon does have a very blunt nose and has a very flat flight plate. In fact, mine was almost puddle-topped. Now, when it comes to the nose, you can see versus like a speed 5 mid-ranges like the Bounce or the Quake, the Canyon is going to be a little bit slower at that speed 4 versus those being speed 5, which means that in the wind, it's going to get pushed back, it's not going to cut through as much, not necessarily affecting the flight, but affecting the distance. Also worth noting, Canyon does have a pretty substantial bead to it, and as you can see, this thing is very gummy and flexible. You can practically taco it, which means that it's going to stay close to where it hits, as with its gumminess and flexibility, it's actually going to absorb the impact when it hits the ground, which is going to keep you close to where you want to be. Now, when it comes to the flight and also the flight numbers, we have speed 4, glide 3, turn 0, and a fade of 2. And overall, I say that is pretty spot on. For a slower arm, though, maybe the fade is just a little bit more, but I do think that it is very, very close for players with slower arms like myself. Because when I'm throwing this on a hyzer, that is exactly what it's going to do. It's not even going to try to flip up to flat or ride straight. It's just going to hold a nice arcing hyzer. But what's nice is it doesn't have a hard dump. It just kind of likes to keep pushing forward as it's hyzering. And when thrown flat, well, it's going to ride very straight until it starts to slow down, have that very nice dependable finish. Even throwing this into 10, 15 mile an hour headwinds, that is exactly what it was doing. Now, when throwing forehands, things get a little bit tricky because a lot of the weight to the Canyon is in the rim and not in the flight plate. So when I was holding it on a forehand grip and went to go to release, even though I feel like I was throwing it flat, the rim almost was bending it slightly downward. So even though I felt like I was throwing it flat, it was coming out on a slightly hyzer angle almost every single time. So that's really just something to be mindful of. Now, once you do start throwing the Canyon on an anhyzer, you're going to see it will kind of hold it just for maybe the first third of the flight before then all of a sudden it will try to stable up and it is going to fight its way back depending on how much height. When you throw it low, yeah, it's not really going to fight back too much, but if you do give it a little bit of air, the Canyon will try to fight out of that flex and have that predictable hyzer finish. And then if you want to know what the Canyon is going to do for a true beginner, this is what to expect. It is going to be very overstable, very predictable. So the slower your arm speed is, the more it is just going to hyzer, and the faster your arm speed is, it is going to be much straighter with just a nice little bit of fade at the very end. Okay, let's go ahead, take the Canyon out onto the course. First, I love it for these forward pushing hyzers. As I mentioned, it doesn't have a very dumpy finish. It likes to keep pushing forward as it hyzers. Additionally, the Canyon has great torque resistance, so you can rip into it hard down a tunnel. It's going to ride very, very straight, but then still have a dependable finish. Pair that with the Canyon's great late stability makes it very trustworthy for those forced over flex shots. And as mentioned earlier, since the Canyon is a speed 4 with that blunter nose, you don't have to worry about it blowing past the basket that you might have to deal with some of the other faster overstable mid-ranges. For the Lefty Lines, let's go ahead and compare the Canyon to the brand new Simon Line Balance from Axiom Discs, as well as my personal favorite overstable mid-range of choice, the DGA Quake. Now, I mentioned it earlier, the big thing you're going to notice is that the Balance and the Quake are going to be faster, which means that distance potential, they do have the edge on the Canyon. The Canyon just is not going to go as far due to the blunter rim. But when it comes to the flight, I feel it fits in the middle between the two. The Simon Line Balance, which, by the way, this is the version 3, so the most recent one to come out, which is supposed to be the straightest, and it is definitely that. That version of the Balance is going to be very straight, still have that predictable finish at the very end, but it's going to hold straight longer than the Canyon. Kind of like when the Canyon is thrown into a headwind, it's going to straighten out. That is what the Balance is going to do. The Quake, on the other hand, is the most overstable option, as it fights into a hyzer angle and has a very dumpy finish compared to the other two. Now, when it comes to forehand, this is kind of what I mean for the Canyon. I felt like I threw that flat, but it still came out on a slight hyzer, which means you didn't really notice any bit of a turn whatsoever. It just kind of hyzered out. Whereas the version 3 Balance, that gets a good amount of turn in the middle of the flight before a subtle finish at the very end, definitely showing that it's the straightest. And then the Quake. Now, this is a slightly beat-in Quake. I've had in my bag for a little bit, and it still gets a bit of turn, but it checks up extremely quickly and then has a really hard finish. Again, I think the Canyon appearing that it's more overstable here is just because, as I mentioned earlier, how the rim just feels like it just wants to throw it on a hyzer angle every single time when I think I'm throwing it flat. So my final thoughts on the Canyon, wow. I feel Trash Panda did knock it out of the park with this mid-range because they wanted an overstable mid-range. That is what they got. This is very torque resistant, has a nice predictable finish, great for the wind, great for players of all skill levels. This is going to be a very popular disc in a lot of players' bags, and as I mentioned, it's not going to go very far because of just how much it's going to just impact the ground and absorb it. Just a great tool to have. Thank you again all so much, and if you need a new disc, be sure to visit GreatLakesDisc.com. Till the next time, everyone, keep banging them chains.